Hello viewers, good morning. Very happy to speak to you as part of our playlist in Similie. Today our guest is Sikyong Penpa Tsering. He is the president of the Tibetan Central Tibet Administration. In other words, he is the head of Tibet Government in Exile. And in conversation with Sikyong, I'll address you as Sikyong henceforth. My first thing I would like to know is that how has His Holiness Dalai Lama's personality impacted you personally?
Now, His Holiness is a figure that every Tibetan looks up to, whether he's young or old. So, in Tibet, just to have a glimpse of him itself is considered a major event in your personal life, to be able to have a glimpse of, and you don't get to see His Holiness that much, you know. So, but in exile, it is a different situation. Then His Holiness was also responsible for creating the identity of all the three provinces together after coming into exile. So, when we were children, when we were very young, we used to hate every Chinese because we heard so many stories about Chinese invasion, their brutality and all that when we were growing up in the late 60s and early 70s. So we used to hate the Chinese, every Chinese. But then, you know, when His Holiness thinks holistically, broader level, then he advises us that even Chinese people are human beings. They are also suffering. So we cannot blame all the Chinese people. It's only those at the leadership who's doing this, in creating all this unhappiness in human beings, including the Chinese people. So that broadens our thinking, you know. So this is just one example of how His Holiness has led us, how His Holiness has enlightened us in understanding things in a more holistic manner, to look at different dimensions of different issues, because any issue will have its good side and bad side. So he teaches us how to look at things from a holistic perspective, from a logical point of view. So these are things that His Holiness has influenced us through the...
I would be a little more intrusive. You see, early childhood you were in Karnataka.
Yes.
And that time, as you said, that opportunity to meet His Holiness was not as much. Later on, at some stage of your life, and when you grew up and occupied important positions, then you would have shifted to Dharamshala and got more opportunity to come in contact with His Holiness. Now, what are those qualities which you imbibed from Dalai Lama, rather than because as a small child in Karnataka you were away, you were not in direct contact with him. Could you give one or two examples for our readers, listeners, viewers? This thing you picked up from him after you came in close contact with him.
No, I think two concepts, which are very, very important.
Yes.
His Holiness keeps talking about the oneness of humanity.
Oneness of humanity, right.
All human beings are same.
Okay.
Irrespective of what colors, or what country, what region, geographical region you come from. We are all human beings and we all have the same intelligence, the same brain. If we can perceive humanity from that perspective, then there does not need to be killing of each other. There would be more empathy with each other. Then the other concept is understanding the nature of the interdependent nature of our existence. We don't exist by ourselves. Humans are social animals. So we live with others.
It's a collective existence.
Anything that happens to one also impacts others. So these two concepts, I think, were very, very deeply rooted and influencing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My next question to him is that in 2017, His Holiness Dalai Lama is said to have restated that Tibet does not seek independence from China but seeks development, cooperation. And few years back In 2005, he had admitted that Tibet is a part of China and Tibetan culture and Buddhism are being part of Chinese culture. Now, I would like to know that is there a change from this position, or this is being viewed in some other perspective? Perhaps you can throw some light on that.
I think one consistent position that His Holiness has maintained on the historical status of Tibet is that His Holiness is not a historian himself, and that history be best left to historians, because it's in the past. Because His Holiness also cannot change past history. The Chinese government also cannot, at their whims and fancy, change history that has happened in the past. So it's best left to historians. So what His Holiness means by seeking a solution to the Sino-Tibet conflict through the middle way policy is a peaceful solution, a non-violent solution that is done through negotiation. That is mutually beneficial both for the Chinese people and the Tibetan people, because whether we like it or not, we don't have a Hanuman to lift Tibet out of that place and put it somewhere else. So we have lived as neighbors with India and China over centuries, and we will have to live as neighbors in future also. So if we have to live as neighbors, then why not live in peace with each other and in harmony with each other instead of fighting with each other all the time? So that is His Holiness thinking. Presently, is Tibet occupied by China? Yes, it is occupied by China. But historically, was Tibet an independent state? Yes, it was an independent state. So there are no two, what His Holiness means is trying to find a solution through peaceful means.
Between these two contrasting situations.
So there is the strategy also that we have adopted after I came into this position. We also followed the middle way policy, because it was proposed by His Holiness, supported by a larger number of Tibetans, and then approved unanimously by the Tibetan Parliament in Exile. So and reiterated by His Holiness. You mentioned about 2017, but this was way back in 1997. So even earlier than that, and even after the 1997 adoption by the Tibetan Parliament in Exile about the middle way policy, His Holiness reiterated that he would follow the middle way policy. So there is no two dimensions to this. His Holiness is very committed, because when he believes in the concept of European Union, even now His Holiness would say, if it is not for the concept of European Union, Europeans would still be fighting with each other. So he always thinks about the common interests, and when that can be applied to Europe, then why not Tibetans with Chinese? Because the ultimate question is, will the people be happy? Will the subjects be happy? It's not a question of who rules. Even if a Tibetan rules Tibetans, if the rule is not appreciated, if people are not happy, it doesn't make sense. So the whole idea is for people to be happy on both sides, from the Chinese side as well as the Tibetan side.
There's something truly great. The concept of talking about the European Union gives rise and makes us realize that if it can be applied there, if it can be followed, and if it is successfully being implemented there, why not try it here? And also keep in mind the general happiness of the people, and people, not merely Tibetans, keep in mind the Chinese also. I think this is truly fascinating. Be with us. This dialogue with Sikyong will continue. Thank you. Year-long celebration of his birth centenary I had organized. Sure.
Okay.